How you doing? This is Tyson Franklin. With me today is Jim McDannald. And if it sounds like we're giggling a lot, it's because it's about the fifth take we've done of starting this. I keep calling him a criminal mastermind, so which he might be. I don't know. We do know each other pretty well. So, Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I haven't committed any crimes yet today, but I still have about 3 hours left here in Montreal to do so. I'm happy to be your partner in crime, and hopefully we haven't lost the entire audience who thinks that marketing is a crime. But I think it's not marketing that's the real. It's not marketing that's the real crime. But no, I'm excited to jump in with you today and talk a little bit about today's topic.
I know, once we start, we'll stop laughing. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about developing expertise in a niche. So what does that mean? From your perspective, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think it's really about kind of podiatrists taking an active role in seeking out kind of the type of care that they want to provide, right? So developing an expertise in kind of a subspecialty of podiatry, and then finding the right messaging and really kind of putting it out there for the public to see. I think last time we talked in great detail about why it's important to start with kind of a ideal patient, but this is more, I would say, internal motivation from the actual podiatrists themselves. You know, some of us went to school, podiatry school, for a very specific reason. There's something that motivated us to kind of get us into the profession. So it's how do we translate that initial motivation, and it can change over time. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but how do you kind of build a practice that is separating yourself or differentiating yourself from kind of other providers, whether it's in the profession or healthcare providers in general?
So when you say motivate us to get into it, so other than money, which is I know some people did podiatry purely because they knew it made good money. So, but I know a lot of other people got into podiatry because they might have been a sports person. So they've always had that interest in sports. Or my background was art. So when I heard that you could make these things called orthotics and did them by hand and did plaster cast, that actually really excited me, which is why I went down that pathway. So is that what you mean by when people, they get into the health profession, they get into podiatry for a certain reason, and then they actually follow that interest?
Yeah, for sure. I think not everybody's that way, but I think someone either, for me example, when I was younger, I was always a kind of competitive runner and had all kinds of foot and ankle and lower leg issues. And, seeing a kind of a top level podiatrist who had treated some Olympic level athletes was pretty inspiring to me. And, kind of wanting to get into that sports medicine and that running niche was kind of what I definitely could see myself doing something like that. So that's what was kind of my initial driver to learn more about the profession. Obviously, as I jumped into it more, there's a huge different types of opportunities available. Maybe somebody, wasn't my case, but maybe someone, has had to deal with, diabetes and the complications of diabetes as a family member. They had something like that it was kind of a motivational thing about how they learned about, foot care and those ways. Obviously, the combination of kind of clinical and surgical aspects of things is somewhat appealing, especially in the U.S. to some people that want to, kind of jump into a subspecialty right away. But it's trying to find I would say that the first point is knowing kind of what kind of care you want to do more of, whether that's from your initial motivation or kind of where you've learned along the path during your education and your residency about this is a type of a practice you want to have. Do you want to be going to the hospital all the time? Do you want to treat wounds? Do you want to treat runners? Do you want to treat sports medicine athletes? And then it's about, taking action off of those things that are going to provide more professional satisfaction in a way.
Well, I suppose it's one of those things too. It's like nail surgery, for example. Like in Australia, there's some people that really love nail surgery and they want to niche down into that area. And sometimes they get afraid, if I niche into one area, once again, am I going to lose patients? And I'm thinking, no, you will just see more of that type of thing that you want to see. And I don't think someone from high school sort of sits back and goes, I want to do more nail surgery. That's probably one of those skills or specialities that once you're in podiatry, you work out, I actually really enjoy that. And maybe diabetic foot care might be the same thing, unless you've had a family member that may have been you've been exposed to it that way. But if you haven't been, that may be something you gain an interest in once you actually start working. You don't even know that actually really floats your boat until you do more of it.
No, you're completely right there. And I think it's a matter of tapping into that interest in that area of kind of professional satisfaction, but also it has to be, grounded in kind of the financial realities of the area of the country, or the type of, reimbursement, or the financial aspect of your practice as well.
Yeah.
Because if, if you're treating runners and, you're not getting compensated fairly for orthotics or other types of treatment, then maybe you can still do some of that in some different capacities, but in order to kind of be a viable business, as a private practice, it's super important that you find those areas that you're interested in professionally, but it also ties into the financial reality of what you're doing and how you're practicing.
And would you say depends where you live as well? Like the size of the area that you live in. If you want to treat, say, a lot of sports people, but you live in a really, really small country town, then that may not be as feasible an idea if you're in a larger city where you're exposed to a lot more people.
No, 100%. I think you have to you have to understand the demographics, the population. If you move to the middle of the desert, you're not, and you want to have a skiing practice or a ski orthotics practice in the middle of the desert, you're probably not in the right spot. So, there's definitely ways that if you're already set up somewhere, that you can niche your practice or kind of treat more of your ideal patients, but obviously taking into account kind of what the reality of the surrounding area is super important to kind of be cognizant of where your struggles are, where the opportunities are, because every location, whether it be a big city, a small town, in the mountains, on the ocean, there's going to be subsets of different types of patients that are going to live in those specific areas. But when you know what you want your specific niche to be, or your area of expertise, it's super important to, like I said, have an active plan to differentiate yourself. And sometimes it's not only just marketing necessarily, but it's, if you want to be a sports medicine podiatrist, maybe it's being a part of the American Academy of Podiatric Sports Medicine, or going to the American College of Sports Medicine meetings, or meeting more people in, volunteering at an event in your local area like the marathon, or applying to work at the Olympic trials. There's ways to kind of expand your reach. So even if, let's say, you're in a smaller location, if you have a resume or training that's beyond the scope of the other providers in a local area, maybe those types of steps will help you expand geographically along with the types of patients you treat, but also get your name more well known, so people are willing to come and see you for very specific types of problems.
It makes perfect sense, because you might have an interest in wounds, for example. So if you have an interest in wounds, or if you have an interest in dermatology, like I said, you need to go along to the events where these things are being held, where you can actually learn more about it. And sometimes too, the person who creates a niche or becomes a bit of an expert in a particular area, normally they don't know a huge amount more than, it's not like they know 10 times more than the average podiatrist. They just know more than the average podiatrist. And they have an interest in that area. And I don't think it takes long for word to get around when you're actually good in a particular area of podiatry, more so than the average podiatrist. And then you can use that in your advertising, your marketing, and therefore you start seeing more of those patients, and your expertise gets even better than the average podiatrist.
And I think it helps you actually develop win-win relationships with other podiatrists, because sometimes we see ourselves as this one profession. We are podiatrists, right? So the podiatrist down the street, they opened up 2 blocks away. Now we're having competition with each other, right? It doesn't have to be that way. Maybe that podiatrist likes to do wound care and you like to do sports medicine. Maybe he hates seeing runners, right? There's sometimes runners can be a bit high maintenance. They want to run.
Pain in the ass.
They want to run 50 to 60 miles a week and not take any time off, despite you telling them to rest, and do things like that. So, there are ways to, develop these win-win relationships, even within a tight community of podiatrists, that everyone's kind of getting what they want out of it. Obviously, if there's a lot of kind of niche, crossover, maybe that's not quite as possible, but you'd be surprised how many of these kind of win-win relationships you can have with other even podiatrists in your local area. If you're in sports medicine, it's with, physical therapists or physios, chiropractors, just general sports medicine doctors, even orthopods in your area, and you're in the US. Maybe, they love doing knees and shoulders, and they just kind of do feet because they have to, and people come into the clinic. But if you're referring them, or you develop a good working relationship with some of these other specialties, it can really help your own practice grow, so you can, like I said, do more of the work you love and really kind of double down on your expertise and be seen as that local expert.
And I think it's really important what you said about working with other podiatrists. It's not, you don't always have to be in competition. It can be a win-win. And I think any podiatrist that's moving into a new town and you're about to set up a practice is get on the phone, ring up the existing podiatrists in the area and say you want to have a meeting with them over a coffee, and get to actually meet them. Not every podiatrist out there is mean or nasty or wants to be a competitor. I've heard so many stories of podiatrists that have moved into an area, and the existing podiatrist there has reached out and said, "Hey, I see that you're new. Do you want to catch up for a coffee?" And all they get is crickets. The person, and then the next thing they're hearing negative stuff about them, and they go, I don't get it. So I think if you're the new person going into town, ring up the existing people, tell them you're coming to, tell them, you don't have to tell them or give them warning that you're coming. Wait till you open your doors, surprise them, surprise. But then have a meeting with them and find out, what are they good at? What is something that they like that you may, like you said, that you may not like? And you go, oh, great, I don't like seeing those sort of patients. Can I send them to you? And start actually creating referral relationships with other podiatrists in your area. And therefore, it gives you more time to niche into a certain spot.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're trying to kind of build your own kind of podiatry network in your local community there, right? The goal of everybody in that community of podiatrists is to provide great care to the patients and to the local community. So if you can, become an expert and be really, really good at, a subset of patients or kind of a niche focus, then you're able to really, provide great care for those patients in the local area. I was lucky enough when I was in Eugene, Oregon, even when I joined a larger orthopedic group, a lot of private practice podiatrists were kind to me, and we had, I think it was monthly meetings where we get together, all have dinner and just kind of like talk about, difficult cases, talk about, how the business is going or how the practice is going. And people were very welcoming to me as a young podiatrist straight out of residency. So I'm all for collaboration and, finding win-win relationships with other people, whether it's podiatrists or other specialties, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to help patients solve their problems and live, happier, healthier lives. So.
Yeah, have you got any examples of people or podiatrists that that have niched their practice a certain way that have done well? What the type of things they've niched into? Because I know a couple that come to mind, but I'm going to let you have a shot first. Yeah,
sure. So like probably the one that I've kind of been fixated on, or when I was in school wanted to be like, was a guy by the name of Amal Saxena. He's a highly regarded sports medicine podiatrist and surgeon who has operated basically almost on every single Olympic medalist from the United States over the last, 15 or 20 years. And he practices in Palo Alto, California. He's someone that's a very good, he's a member of the American Academy of Podiatric Sports Medicine and a lot of other organizations, but he's someone that, has a very specific focus like in sports medicine, and it's pretty narrow. But there's definitely examples of other podiatrists in the US and in Canada that do something similar. But like when I was going through my training and in school, he was like the kind of person that I kind of looked up to, and I saw the research papers he was writing about running and sports medicine, and is kind of a motivation for me getting into practice.
Yeah, well, a couple that come to mind straight away. Joseph Frankel, who's in Victoria, and he loves wounds. So he's really tried to create a niche in that area. But I remember when he was on my other podcast and we were talking about it, I'm pretty sure he said it was like about 10 or 20% of his patients were related to wounds. So the 80% of his practice was still general podiatry, with a bit of sports, bit of everything. But about 10 to 20% was in that area that he really, really liked. And he was getting well known for that. And then another clinic, NK Active in UK, Nick Knight, they're just a sports clinic. And that's what they've really based everything around. They don't do any general foot care. They've niched in that area and they are doing extremely well. So there's just room. There's room for you to, So you've got Nick Knight that's doing it 100% sports, but then you've got like Joseph that's doing 10 or 20% in an area he loves, but they're both really happy the way they've got it set up.
I think you're perfect. Like, those are two perfect examples because, niching or developing an expertise, it's kind of it's a spectrum. It's not like you have to, like, if you decide that you want to see more runners, right, you don't have to like necessarily go all in and, turn everybody away. I think that's one of the things that we sometimes, when I bring up a topic, and at least from the clients I work with initially, is like, we really need to put out a specific message. So when people, look at your website, or they, if they interact with you, they see kind of themselves in the treatment chair, right? So it's definitely, and it does, like I said, doesn't have to happen overnight, and you don't necessarily have to live in a big city to make it happen. But if you can get, 20% or 25% of the types of doing the type of care that you like to provide, it's going to lead to a more professional satisfaction. You're just going to enjoy going to work more. But really, like I said, like, it's about, it's helpful in so many other ways, because, you can really project that message out into the public. And then you have a clear path as far as, which conferences do you want to go to, how do you want to expand on your expertise, and just really kind of go in deep, as deep as you want to. Maybe it's not as deep as, Amal Saxena or some of the folks that you've mentioned, but when you do niche, though, you look, you're different from everybody else. You're not just another podiatry clinic in your community.
Well, when I had my last clinic in Cairns, and if anyone had asked us, most of the people I spoke to, friends and all that, if somebody said, describe what my clinic was all about, they'd say, oh, it's a sports, biomechanics, orthotics clinic. That's pretty much the description. You went to our website, all you would have seen was sports, biomechanics, orthotics. That's it. But when I had a look at the figures, and I did this just recently, I had a look at my last figures from 2015, 2016 before I sold it, 30% of our income came from general foot care. So we were technically 70% biomechanics, sports and orthotics, but 30% of our income came from general foot care. But if you went to our website, we wouldn't have even mentioned that general foot care was there. So we never turned it away, but we did it on certain days, and we managed a practice that we wanted to put out a certain message. This is what we wanted to niche in, but we still saw other patients that was not really our ideal patients, but we treated them anyway.
No, I think that's a great point. I think that kind of addresses the overall fear, right? Is that if I don't have 80 different diagnoses, like on my homepage with a drop down tab to see like every single thing a patient could come to my clinic for, like, my website is not complete, right? But you said, just by kind of developing that area of expertise and basing your marketing messages around that expertise, it's almost like a gravitational pull of other types of procedures, other types of patients are going to be pulled into your clinic. But you don't have to actually spend any marketing on them. You can just kind of find their way to your door, and whatever you want to treat, you can treat more of those types of patients.
Yeah, well, when I think of, in the last episode when we were talking about my ideal patient, and I described my ideal patient, 42-year-old male, and I went through it all. Now, he was a real person. I won't say his name, but he was, and I saw him just a couple of weeks ago, I gave him a wave. He was just my ideal patient. I saw him for over 20 years. So he's 42 when he started, but he's not 42 now. But what was interesting about him, we'll call him George. What was interesting about George was George started out as a biomechanical patient, but then after that, he was also then coming in for general foot care. So if I looked at how much money George spent with me, say, over a couple of year period, probably 70% of it was to do with sports, biomechanics and orthotics, but 30% was general foot care. So it's the thing, when you're targeting a certain area, you're still going to get all aspects of podiatry if that's what you're still willing to treat.
No, for sure. For sure, that's a great example.
And I love what you said about websites too, where you go to a website, you'll click on the drop-down box and all of a sudden 42 things pop up. And I'll tell you right now, there's no patient scrolling through and they're going, have you got something here about cracked heels? No, you don't, so therefore I'm not going to go and see you. They just assume you're a podiatrist. You're going to do cracked heels, unless you tell them otherwise when they ring up.
No, 100%. I think you just really have to keep it as tight as your local community allows, as large as your population is. But like I said, you can always build those things up, and having a tighter marketing message and kind of how people view you. It starts with like how you view yourself, though, right? Like we've been talking about, like you have to really understand who you are, what you want, and then what's a realistic, estimation in your local area. And then, you experiment doing some different things, whether it's your website or, the things you sponsor, or just being out in the community, or the conferences you go to, or the relationships with other providers. Maybe you start a sports medicine, if you want to do running or sports medicine, maybe you start a sports medicine journal club that invites anybody of any provider with any specialty in. So there's no limit to the ability to kind of like put your name out there and put your stamp on what exactly you want to do. It's a matter of, obviously we're busy, we're doing things. It's finding those time efficient ways to get those messages in front of the right people.
No, I agree with you. And I have nothing else really to mention on this particular subject other than I think you've nailed it in so many different ways and I think we've looked outside of niching more than what people probably thought this episode was going to be about.
Well, it's easy when you see like it's going to be about niching, or they're going to tell me I have to do this one type of procedure, or I have to do this one type of like kind of subspecialty. I mean, like you mentioned previously, like just someone who is like laser focused on saying that they do ingrown toenails, and just does a lot of things around ingrown toenails is going to gain more awareness for that than someone that has 30 things on the website, right? So it's not about like saying you only do something or otherwise you're going to fail, right? But by having a little bit more of a focus, you're able to kind of craft your messages and get it out in front of those ideal patients in a way that is going to help you build a practice that you're excited to go to each day, and really help people and provide them with great care. So yeah, it's been fun talking to you today, Tyson. I can't wait for our next one.
No, so well, the next one's going to be even better than the first four we've done. But before, what's the name of our website if people want to go to the website where we've got set up for Podiatry Marketing?
Yeah, so if people just check out podiatry.marketing. That is the URL. There's no .com, there's no www. You just type in podiatry.marketing into your browser. You can check out our episodes, and feel free to leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you think about the episodes thus far and what you'd like to see in the future.
That'd be cool. Okay, Jim, I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great, Tyson.